All right, so hello to everybody listening into this recording. My name is Scott. I work here for Nextiva over here in the training department. And what we have on the agenda here today is a little bit of Nextiva app training for both the computer or the desktop version of the app and also for the mobile app as well. So if I can direct your attention over here to the right-hand side, I do have a list of topics that we're going to be covering. I'm going to do my best to highlight whatever we're talking about in the moment. So that way, if you do need to fast forward or rewind, you can definitely feel free to do so and know exactly what we're talking about. And I also will take a few seconds of a checkpoint between each category. That way, if you do need to pause the recording, like if you need to ask your lead or supervisor a question, you can definitely do so. And then obviously, I'll continue on like once you unpause the recording. So just keep that in mind as we go through the training. But without further ado, let's get into our first subject here. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is about adding contacts. So I'm going to bring my app here to center stage, and I'm going to tell you a fact, and that fact is that this is my personal Nextiva app. This is not a demo account or anything like that. And the reason I'm pointing that out is if you take a look up here at the top, it says My Contacts 20. And that's not me bragging and saying like, hey, look at me and my 20 friends over here. But more to the point, if you're getting this training before you even touch the Nextiva app, when you open up your Nextiva app for the first time, it's going to be like receiving a brand new cell phone with a new SIM card. So it's going to say My Contacts 0 up here at the top. And that's the first thing that I'm going to teach you all today is how you can add people to your contact list if you want to. First of all, you can add people from the company directory. So if you take a look over here on the left-hand side, if you see where my mouse cursor is, this globe-looking icon is the directory. It even says as much if you hover over it long enough. And I'm going to go ahead and click on it, show you the directory here. Now, know that you're not going to have to deal with some 1,800 extensions like I do. These are all of our extensions within the phone company, our test phones, our dead phones, my fellow coworkers, you name it. But you'll have the people within your own office, familiar names, and friendly faces that you recognize. So if you do want to add somebody to your contact list from the company directory, very simple to do so. What you would do is find whoever you're looking for. You can scroll up and down, and everybody will be sorted alphabetically by their last name. If you don't feel like scrolling up and down, you can also use the search up at the top as well. So you can put in somebody's first or last name, and it will isolate that particular person. Whenever you find who you're looking for, what you can do is you can right-click on their name, and you would select the very last one in the right-click menu. It'll say Add to Contacts. Now, as soon as I do so, like take Jesus here, for example, Jesus would be in my contact list at that point. But that's not the end of the story. From his perspective, the next time that he signs into the Nextiva app, he would receive a pop-up that says, Scott wants to add you as a contact. Do you accept? For lack of a better analogy, it's almost like a friend request on Facebook. You know, somebody has to send the friend request, the other person accepts the friend request, and then voila, you know, you're friends at that point. You can see each other's posts and you can communicate with each other. Same with this as well. Like once Jesus responds to my quote-unquote friend request, if you think about it, not only would he be in my contacts, but I would be in his contacts as well. So he doesn't have to go to the directory to add me. I would already be in his contacts, which is good for Jesus, of course. So once again, if you do want to add somebody from within the company, just go to the company directory, find whoever you're looking for, right-click on them, and select Add to Contacts. And remember, not only will they be in your contact list, but once the other person responds to your friend request, you will be in their contact list as well. So let me take a little checkpoint about this. If anybody does need to pause the recording, ask your lead or supervisor a question, definitely feel free to do so, and we'll continue in just a moment. Okay, so now we're going to talk about adding outside people. So you can add as many outside contacts as you want to. And you might wonder, what would my motivation be for adding outside people? The same motivation that you have for putting people into your cell phone contacts, so you don't have to memorize their telephone number. If you see here on the list later on, we're going to talk about using the app as a literal telephone. So if any of you are going to use the app as a phone on a regular basis, it just makes it that much easier to call somebody up because now you don't have to memorize their telephone number. So here's how you go about adding outside people. What you do is you click on the plus sign up in the upper right-hand corner, and I would select New Contact. You'll note that it gives me a tab up here at the top that, of course, says New Contact. And then all that I'm responsible for doing is putting in a name. It could be a business name. It doesn't have to be a proper name. I can put in their phone number and hit save, and they would be added to my contact list as an outside contact at that point. You might wonder about the gray areas. You don't have to worry about filling out any of the gray areas. As a matter of fact, you can't fill out the gray areas. That would be more information for like your fellow coworkers and not for outside people, if that makes sense. So all that you're responsible for would be the name, number, and hit save, and they will be in your contact list at that point. Just to give you some context of what an outside person would look like, if you take a look at my first person here, Mr. A. Aaron Aronson, full disclosure, I don't really know an Aaron Aronson. That's a fake name that I made up so that it would be first here alphabetically. But my point is that you can add as many outside people as you want to. And again, when we talk about using the app as a phone later on, you'll see that it just makes it that much easier to call them up. All right, so one more time to recap. Go to the plus sign, select New Contact, put in the pertinent information, and hit save, and they will be in your contact list at that point. Let me take a checkpoint for this real quick, and then we'll continue on in just a moment. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about some of the in-office communication aspects of the app. And it begins with presence. So I'll drag this back over to the middle here. And what I'm referring to with presence are these colorful indicators. Now, note that Aaron is an outside person, so he doesn't have any presence indicator. But everybody else that you see on the screen at this current time is a fellow coworker of mine. And you notice that they all have that thing in common where they have the colorful indicator next to their avatar right there. This is what is called presence. So now I'm going to go over the color coding and I'll tell you exactly what it represents, and then we'll take a checkpoint afterwards. So first of all, green. If you see anybody with a green indicator, like Kyle here, for example, that is somebody who is signed in to the desktop app, like the one that I'm teaching you about right now, the one on your computer. So Kyle here, for example, I don't know if he's sitting at his workstation like staring at his screen at the moment, but I do have it on good authority that he's signed into the app. So if I need to call him or chat with him, at least I know that there's a pretty good chance he's going to pick up what I'm putting down, if you will. And that's what the green indicator means, is that they're signed into the computer version of the app, the desktop app. Anybody with an orange indicator, like Chris, for example, is somebody who is signed into the mobile version of the app. And we'll be talking more about the mobile version of the app coming up in just a little bit, but that's how I know if somebody is signed into their mobile app, because of that orange indicator right there. Anybody with a red indicator is somebody who is actively on a phone call at this current time. So you take a look at like Holly and Paul and Maddie, for example. As a matter of fact, take a look at me up here in the upper left-hand corner. There's my avatar, and you can see the little red indicator. Even though I'm recording this to an empty audience at the moment, I'm still on a phone call at the time recording this. So from anybody else's perspective, if they happen to see me, they can see that I'm on a phone call. And for example, they know better than to interrupt me when I'm in the middle of an important training session. So you can see where it pays dividends. I don't get a lot of phone calls or chat requests when I'm in the middle of talking with customers. So that's what the red indicator means, is that that person is currently on a phone call. And then anybody with a gray indicator, like Dylan and Jeremy, for example, that is somebody who is not signed into either version of the app at this current time. It might be their day off, they might be coming in later, but the point is that they're not signed into either version of the app as of me talking right now. So here's a quick color coding recap, and then we're going to take a checkpoint and see if you have any questions. But here are the colors. Green means they're signed into the computer app. Orange means they're signed into the mobile app. Red means that they're actively on a phone call. And gray means they're not signed into either version of the app. So let me take that checkpoint I promised real quick. Feel free to pause the recording if you need to, and we'll continue on in just a moment. Okay, so the next part of this being an in-office communicator has to do with chatting. So you can use this to chat with people within the office if you need to do so. Now that being said, if your office tells you like, hey, we're using Microsoft Teams or Slack or Skype or whatever the case might be, go by whatever your leadership says, of course. But if the company does end up falling in love with using the chat, this is exactly how it works. So I'm going to show you both a one-on-one chat and also show you a group chat as well. Now, first of all, for a one-on-one chat, if you do need to talk with somebody, pretty simple. All you have to do is right-click on their name and select the word chat up here at the top. You'll notice, for example, with Kyle here, it gives me a little tab up at the top so I can see Kyle's name. I can also see his presence up at the top as well, which is very nice. Like, let's say I didn't have Kyle's name like front and center over here. I could still see what his presence is up there at the top. The typing takes place down here at the bottom, so if I want to shoot him a quick hello message, I could certainly do so. I'm not really going to bug him right now. I'm sure he's got better things to do than to talk with me. But the point is that I could if I wanted to. And furthermore, let's say I want to talk to like Jeremy, for example, who, mind you, isn't even signed in. I'm just using Jeremy as an example. But if I were to right-click and select chat for Jeremy, I don't have to end my conversation with Kyle just to talk with Jeremy. I can bounce back and forth as much as I please. And make note that it does keep whatever I typed like right here, so I don't have to retype if I get interrupted like in the middle of a conversation. So I can go back and forth, and quite frankly, I could have as many of these tabs open as I like. But just like your favorite web browser of choice, like the more tabs you have open up top, the smaller and smaller they get. So if you do need to shut down any of these conversations, all you have to do is click on the little X's, like X and X. And if you do get rid of all your conversations, then you're back to like the standard, like the default view of the app at that point. So again, just to recap, if you're doing a one-on-one chat, just find whoever you're looking to chat with in your contacts, right-click on them, select the word chat, and then you're off to the races at that point. For a group chat, now if you're invited to a group chat, you don't have to do much of anything because basically you'll get a little pop-up down in the corner. And if you do, just click on it and acknowledge it. You'll be in the chat at that point as an invitee, if you will. But if you're going to be the one doing the inviting instead of being invited, here's how you can like invite people to your group chat. First of all, to make a group chat in the first place, if you see where my mouse cursor is, up in the upper right-hand corner, there is a little house looking indicator. And if I click on it, you can see a tab comes up here at the top, says My Room. Now, I remind you what to do right here, but essentially what I would do is I would drag and drop people from my contact list over here to the participant section on the right-hand side. They would receive that pop-up that I was talking about a moment ago, and if they were to acknowledge me and accept my invitation, then they would start to populate this participant section over here on the right-handed side. And then once you have everybody you need in the room, you're off to the races. You have yourself like an old-fashioned group chat at that point. What would anybody ever use this for? You could probably brainstorm and think of a few different reasons. But one of the biggest reasons, let's imagine that some of you are working like the same customer or the same client's paperwork, if you will. You could meet up in a group chat and put down specifically what you're working on, and then you don't have like two people doing literally the same work at the same time. And that's one example. Again, you could probably brainstorm and think of a few other examples. But again, if you're going to be the leader of the chat, click on the house icon up in the corner, drag and drop whoever you're inviting, and once they acknowledge you, like once they accept your invitation, they will be in the room with you at that point, and then you can have yourself a group chat. All right, let me take a checkpoint here real quick. Feel free to pause the recording if you do have any questions, and when I come back, we're going to talk about using the app as a phone. All right, so let me shut this down real quick. And now we're going to talk about using the app as a literal telephone. So if you'd imagine, I'm recording this in like May of 2021. About this time last year, there were a lot of people that were in lockdown that were working from home. And they didn't have the means to make or take phone calls, if you'd imagine. Because a lot of companies, even if you had a physical phone, they wanted the physical phone to remain on campus, if you will. Because, they rightfully consider it to be work property. So that left a lot of people in the cold because, you're in lockdown working from home, but you didn't have a phone as a means to take and make phone calls, which is where the Nextiva app really stepped in at that point. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So first of all, as long as you have a headset that you can plug into your computer, you have all the tools necessary to take and make phone calls. And I'm going to show you first about making phone calls here. So you can do this from anybody within your contacts, and then I'll also show you a dial pad coming up here in just a couple of moments. But let's say first that it's somebody within my contacts, like my good old fake friend Aaron Aronson here, for example. If I wanted to call Aaron up, what I would do is I would just right-click on his name, and I have two different ways that I can do so: audio call and call from other device. Here's the difference between the two. Audio call means I'm calling through the computer, like literally calling through the computer. As in, you want to have a pair of headphones with ears and a microphone plugged into one of your USB ports, like I was saying a few moments ago. Now, believe it or not, this conversation was more difficult to have about this time last year. Nowadays, almost everybody is like a veritable Zoom expert, so a lot more people have a headset in their homes than they did this time last year. And again, like I was saying before, that's the only tool that you need is like a headset with a microphone so that you can talk and then people can hear you. And again, if you select audio call, that's what you're doing is you're calling like literally through the computer. The other one that you see here, call from other device, if you are at your workstation with your physical phone, whether it be a Nextiva phone, Polycom phone, whatever you have set up at your workstation, if you select call from other device, your phone will start chirping at you, and if you were to pick it up, it would automatically dial for you at that point. I don't know if anybody remembers like an old school term like telephony system or receptionist assistant or anything like that, but that's essentially what it is. The phone will do the heavy lifting of the dialing. All you have to do is pick up the receiver, and it'll dial for you at that point. So very convenient, again, if you are at your workstation with your physical phone. So let me take a checkpoint here real quick. You can pause it if you need to. In a moment, we'll talk about receiving phone calls. Actually, hold that thought. Before you pause the recording, I told you can do it through the dial pad as well, so let me show that off real quick. All right, so if you see where my mouse cursor is over on the left-hand side, you can see the little dial pad icon right there. And you have a cursor up at the top. So what you can do is you can use your number pad on your keyboard, and you can put in a phone number like so. You can also literally click on the numbers if you feel like doing so. I just personally find that to be a little bit slower. So if any of you use your number pad as much as I do, again, know that you can put just like a raw telephone number up here at the top. And then down below, the big blue button with the telephone would be like audio call, like call through the computer. And then the one over to the right would be call from other device. Again, your physical phone will start chirping at you, and if you were to pick it up, it would dial whatever number that you put up there at the top. All right, now we'll take a checkpoint here real quick. Feel free to pause the recording if you have any questions about making phone calls, and then we'll talk about receiving phone calls in just a moment. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to call myself from my own cell phone so that you all can see what a phone call looks like when it's coming in. So here I go calling myself from my cell phone, and you should see me momentarily. Here we go. So there I am right there, my incoming call, and I can either answer or ignore this phone call. You might not always have this in the foreground, so also note that it does pop up down here in the corner as well. And again, I can either answer it or ignore it. I'm going to go ahead and answer it. All right, so there's my phone call right there. You can see the little tab up at the top. Has a little telephone indicator in there as well to indicate that it's a phone call and not a chat. And then obviously the body of the window is way different too. You can see that down here you have your typical telephone tools. So let me show you the ropes. And I'll start off with this button right here. It's the red button, has a little X through it. That would be for end call. You know, because if you think about it, there's no phone to put back in the cradle. So if you do need to release the phone call, you have a button to do so right there. Over on the other extreme end is the pause symbol, pretty much the universal symbol for hold nowadays, and it's true here with this as well. So when I click on hold, you can see that it puts my call on hold. And then if I need to resume, I can click on resume right here, and then I'm back on the phone call at that point. This right here is supposed to be a microphone with a line through it. That would be your mute button for the headset, like the one you have plugged into your computer, of course. And then these three dots would be the rest of my options. Down here at the bottom would be the volume control. If you have multiple audio devices plugged in, you need to toggle between them. You can do so mid-call if you need to. This right here would be a dial pad. Now you might be wondering, well, I'm already on a phone call. What do I need a dial pad for? Well, imagine you make an outgoing phone call and you run headfirst into a menu. Sure, it would be nice to be able to press 1, press 2, or put in somebody's extension. This dial pad emits the type of tones that a menu would expect to hear so that you can progress. And then you also have transfer and conference options, just like a real phone as well. Let me show you transfer, for example. Now, when you select transfer or conference, it gives you this little mini window right here. And up at the very top, know that you can put in just like a regular telephone number if you need to. Nothing wrong with that at all. But know that you can also utilize your contacts as well. So this is where it comes back to earlier. Like if you put people into your contacts, you don't have to memorize their telephone number. Watch, if I just put in Aaron, for example, there's my good old fake friend Aaron Aronson. I click on his name, he's in the box. But I could also do it for a fellow coworker of mine as well, like Kyle, for example. I put in Kyle's name, there he is right there. Click on his name, he's in the box. So again, you can put a raw telephone number up at the top, but you can also put in one of your contacts as well. Whenever you have what you need up top, I have two different ways that I can transfer this phone call. Transfer now and attended audio. Here's the difference between the two. Let me bring it back up here real quick. All right, so again, you put in the phone number, and then I would have transfer now and attended audio. Transfer now is like what people call blind transfer. Just like the name implies, if I click on transfer now, the call would be over for me immediately, and whoever I was talking with has been transferred to wherever I sent them to, like post-haste. Attended audio would be more like a warm transfer. If I were to click on attended audio, my original caller would be placed on hold, and I would be calling up the person in the box. Presumably give them like a heads up, an account number, like whatever the case might be. Not pictured because I'm really not transferring anybody at the moment, but if you were to imagine right behind this box would be one more blue button like this that says complete transfer. So whenever I get the other person on the phone and I give them the details and they're ready to take the phone call, I would click on complete transfer. And again, the call would be over for me at that point, and whoever I was talking with has been transferred wherever I sent them to. So remember, transfer now is like a blind transfer in that it happens immediately. Attended audio is more like a warm transfer where you check in with the other person before you inevitably complete the transfer by clicking on, of course, complete transfer. All right, let me take a checkpoint here real quick. Pause the recording if you do have any questions about being on a live phone call. And then when I come back, we're going to talk about the mobile app in detail. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the mobile app. So I'm going to summon up this picture, and hopefully it won't take too long for it to come up, but I'm going to bend your ears while we talk about the mobile app here. And for anybody who doesn't know anything about the mobile app, if this is your first experience hearing about it, know that there is a version of the Nextiva app that's available if you have an Android or an iPhone. You can go to the respective Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. No fancy name or anything like that. It's just called the Nextiva app. And again, there's no charge to download the app at all. So you don't have to pay Google or Apple like 1 red cent to do so. Now, the credentials are also the same. So the same username and password that you would use for the computer version of the app would be the same username and password that you would use for the mobile version of the app as well. So with all that being said, when you get signed into the mobile app, you might be just like wondering to yourself, okay, well, what's the purpose of this app? Like, why would I have this mobile app on my cell phone to begin with? And there's a handful of different reasons, but I'm really going to boil it down to like the two biggest reasons. Like, imagine this is the game Family Feud, and there are two answers on the board to why people use the mobile app in the first place. The number two answer is receiving phone calls on the go. If you are signed in to the Nextiva app on your cell phone, if your desk phone were to ring, so too would the Nextiva app on your cell phone as well. So you don't have to do any sort of fancy forwarding or transferring or any of that business, because remember, you had to sign in with your credentials in the first place. So it knows who you are and it knows what extension you are. So basically, it's just like having a secondary Nextiva phone. The only difference is that it just so happens to live on your cell phone. So if I can draw your attention to the picture here. Now, this is not a stock photograph. This is an actual screenshot that I took from my own cell phone. And whoever called me, they didn't have any caller ID, which is why it says unassigned up top here. But what's more important is you can see our logo, and you can see where it says Nextiva Audio. My point being that it tips its hand. It tells you that it's a work phone call before you answer the phone call, which is super important because I'm sure you all answer the phone differently for work than you would for like a friend or a family member. So again, it does tell you that it's a Nextiva call, like it's a work phone call, before you pick up the phone and answer it. Now that's one reason why people use the mobile app. So now you can comfortably leave your workstation, but as long as you're signed into the app, you will receive those important phone calls that come to your extension. One other thing of note here, I'm sure you all would have figured this out without me, but if you go to the menu up in the corner here and select the sign out, that would mean that you no longer would be receiving any work phone calls until the next time that you sign in. So, something that the first time that you're woken up with a phone call, like 9 o'clock at night, you'll remember to sign out every time thereafter. But I kind of make it my duty to tell people, don't forget to sign out when you're off the clock, because otherwise you're going to receive those work phone calls if you're signed in. All right, let me take a checkpoint about that real quick, and then I'm going to tell you the number one reason of why people use the mobile app. Okay, so the number one reason that people use the mobile app is the exact opposite direction, outgoing phone calls. So here's the picture that you see on your screen at this current time. It looks like a dial pad. It is a dial pad as far as that goes. So nothing new, nothing like mind-blowing here on the screen, but the point that I'm trying to make is that if you make an outgoing phone call from the Nextiva app on your cell phone, you would be showing your work for caller ID purposes as opposed to your cell phone caller ID. To some people, that might not be a big deal, but to some people, that's everything. Take your doctor, for example. If any of you have the cell phone number of your primary care physician, you probably have a pretty good relationship with your doctor, right? So the thing I'm trying to point out here is, like, imagine I was your doctor and I called one of you, my patients. I could do so through the Nextiva app, and then you would be seeing my office number for caller ID purposes. So that way, if anybody just like blindly turned around from caller ID and called me back, they'd be calling on my office and hopefully be making an appointment, as opposed to me making a brand new friend on my cell phone. So, I've never done a straw poll or anything like that, but I've done enough of these trainings that I know which way like the wind blows. And suffice to say, that is the number one reason why people use the mobile app, so that you can make outgoing phone calls from your cell phone behind the veil, behind the wall of your work caller ID. All right. So let me take a checkpoint about that real quick. If anybody needs to pause, definitely feel free to do so. And then when I come back, we're going to continue like the rest of the training here. Okay. So just a couple other things I want to point out about the mobile app. If you take a look down here at the bottom, not by coincidence, the icons down at the bottom are meant to be like the same icons over on the left-hand side. So they try to make the two Nextiva apps as relatable to each other as possible, especially in the contact section. So let me show you what the contact section looks like here. All right, so you should recognize some of these names like Aaron and Jeremy and Kyle and Holly, for example. My point that I'm making is that anybody that you put into your contacts on the computer version of the app will already be in the mobile version of the app as well. So you don't have to do the same work twice. Like, again, it is, a two-way system as far as that goes. And on top of that, what I mean by it being a two-way system is if you see the plus sign up in the corner, you can put your finger on the plus sign, and you can add an outside contact on the cell phone version of the app. And if you do so, then they would bleed into the computer version of the app as well. So again, it's a two-way street. Whichever version that you put your contacts into, they will appear in the other version as well. And then one other big thing I want to point out is if you put your finger on the funnel up at the top, it will bring up like a little mini menu. And if you see here, there is local address book. That's referring to like your SIM card contacts, like your personal contacts on your cell phone. So fair enough, there's not a lot of circumstances where people like to cross over their work life and their home life. But if you ever find yourself in a position where you need to call like one of your personal contacts, but you want to do it through the Nextiva app, that's what local address book is referring to right there. And then also, even if they're not in your contacts, if you need to call up anybody from the company directory proper, that's what directory is for as well. Again, it's going to list off every extension within the company, but you can also use the search up at the top. So if you are looking for somebody in particular, you can definitely do so, and you can call them up if you need to. Believe it or not, that's pretty much the information for the mobile app. I got one more thing I'm going to show to y'all real quick, but let me insert one more checkpoint, and then when I come back, I'm going to show you where the guides are at. Okay, so for further supplemental training, if you do want to take a look at a user guide or two, let me show you exactly where they're at. We have a website, nextiva.com/guides. And this is where we keep all of our PDF documents for all the different trainings. So if you might have heard of this website before, but if you haven't, nextiva.com/guides. And if you go under product guides, from the drop down, you can select Nextiva app. And here's where the quick reference guides are. So these aren't huge textbooks or anything. The computer version's like 7 pages long. The iPhone and the Android version are like 3 pages long each. And there's no test at the end. The test is real life, of course. But this does give a breakdown of a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. And it does put little screenshots over here to the right as well. So definitely feel free to check that out. Just one more time, nextiva.com/guides. Go to product guides and select Nextiva app from the drop down. And then there they are, right there. All right, so let me get that off the screen. And I just want to thank everybody who made it all the way to the end of this training here today. I appreciate everybody who took the time to learn a little bit about this. But you will think of other questions. If you haven't noticed, the basis of this training is meant to be a foundation to show you the most important things that you might legitimately use the Nextiva app for. But you may come across questions down the road. If you do, make sure to let your immediate leader supervisor know. If they don't have an answer for you, you know what they're going to do. They're going to turn around and contact us over here at Nextiva. So again, for those of you listening in, thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you all have a great day, and thanks for choosing Nextiva. Take care, everybody.